Hi, STS. Thank you for taking time to come for the session. Really, really appreciate it. It's so that you don't do the intro, but I was actually looking at STS background. It is like flabbergasting, right? I coincidentally started with Sybase. In my early career, I started with products like Sybase and Informix and Oracle. So I have very fond memories with the relational databases. So it's great to meet someone who has worked in hardcore system technology and platform. So fantastic, Stace. Thanks a lot for coming. I'm sure audience are going to take away a lot of knowledge and wealth of knowledge from your sharings. Once again, thank you very much for taking time. And I know it's late for you, and that's an extra special thank you for you.
More than welcome, Suresh. Really would like to thank you for inviting me to CTO Talk. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really happy to hear that you and I share a deep love for relational databases. So it
Yeah.
brings back fond memories of being a hands-on engineer many, many years ago. Uh, so was
Yeah.
my first love in technology. And really provided me a good founding, so to speak, in various things I did after that.
I remember those days. So Oracle used to have we had a needed a high performance system. So at that time, the Oracle updates were so slow. So what we had to do is they had a data type called long raw format. So we had only one primary key and stored the end. There was no object database at that time. So I was at HP at the time. We were doing C and C++. So we took the complete object data, and there's no JSON we are really talking about 98, right? There's no JSON
Yeah.
format. There's no XML. XML is just starting to come. So we dumped the object in a binary format in long raw into that Oracle database, so that we had to process 250 call detail. We were doing a telecom application, 250 call detail records per second throughput to detect frauds. And when we started testing that system, it was 1 second per one CDR per second, right? And we had to go from 1 CDR per second to 250 CDRs per second, and that journey really helped me understand the intricacies of SQL area, shared pool, query optimization, compiled SQLs. That whole journey was such a insightful journey. So I think, as you said, it's retickled a lot of fond memories. I think we should sync up when you're in Chennai. I'll probably not take more time on this, and let's Veta do the introduction. Thank you very much for coming again.
Thank you, Suresh.
Thanks, Suresh. That actually made my job much, much easier. Thank you so much. But thank you for joining us today, all of you. We're very happy to launch season 2, and this is the first episode of CTO Talk in the season 2. And we hope that you're all safe and happy, and have your cup of coffee ready next to you, because this session is going to be super interesting. Some of you have been an integral part of this community from the first ever talk. Thank you for being part of this community we are building. We used the break to rebrand CTO Talk and re-strategize a bit on how the talks are going to happen going forward. So we're very happy to be back with one of the best tech folks in the community today, as how Suresh mentioned, STS Prasad. Very briefly, probably I'll tell you something which Suresh hasn't told right now. STS has graduated from IIT Madras, and he went on to work with HCL, Jungli, and Amazon, and currently he's the Senior Vice President of Engineering at Freshworks. STS, thank you so much for accepting to do this. Despite different time zones, as Suresh mentioned, and busy schedules, you've accepted to do this for the community. Thank you so much, and the floor is all yours.
Cool. Thank you so much, Sweta. Appreciate your running the poll as well. Gave me a quick sense of the audience. It would have been so much easier to be in the same hall with the audience and have a show of hands and be able to actually interact with the audience more directly, but in these COVID times, I guess Zoom is the best format we can go with. I'm hoping that people are able to participate as well as they possibly can through Zoom. At some point, hopefully, we'll be able to do this back in our usual physical format. So really, as I said earlier, big thanks to Suresh Sambandam from Kissflow for inviting me to present at CTOtalk. It's a great pleasure of mine to be able to share the experience I've benefited from through my journey at Freshworks. I really look at these talks like CTOtalk and other series that we have specifically oriented at SaaS companies in India. I see it as sort of taking forward Girish Mathrubootam's mission. Girish is our founder at Freshworks. So his vision is to make India into a SaaS product nation. And he encourages all of us to go out and share our experiences with other SaaS companies so we can truly benefit from each other's experience, be able to make sure that we have all the learnings that each of us gains as a SaaS company. I'm sure other companies benefit too, but that's part of the vision that G has overall beyond Freshworks, is to really look at India as a SaaS product nation. So I hope that my talk today will help you glean some of the learnings that I've had through Freshworks. I joined Freshworks in 2016 when it was called Freshdesk, a 6-year-old startup. I moved back to the Chennai from the Bay Area in 2016 in August and joined Freshworks. Was there in Chennai through March of this year. And in March, I relocated back to the Bay Area, also as we are setting up our headquarters here in the Bay Area in California. So it continues to be a great journey with Freshworks. I'm still with Freshworks, just that I'm not in Chennai anymore. And unfortunately, almost as soon as I came back in March, we went into the COVID phase where everything was remote and locked down and all those things. So it, at some level, almost feels like I'm still in Chennai because I'm on Zoom all the time with folks in Chennai anyway. I'm just virtually here in the Bay Area, but it's been a great journey through Freshworks, especially being in Chennai, leading the teams there. So I'm hoping you'll be able to benefit from my journey through Freshworks as we go through today's presentation. So I'd like to keep it as interactive as possible. We can take questions at the end too. Sweta, if there's any way you can ping me when a question comes up. I'm really not able to see the Zoom chat when I'm in my presentation mode. How will you be able to ping me when there's a question? Is there a way for me to have a chat window?
I'm not sure about the chat window when you're presenting, but I could probably give you a nudge once, as and when there's a question.
Okay, sounds good, Shweta. Thank you. So folks, I'm going to start with the journey of Freshworks. We celebrated our 10th anniversary as Freshworks this year in 2020. And it was called Freshdesk back in 2010 when Girish and Shan founded Freshdesk. Our first product, Freshdesk, was launched in 2011. And we went on to launch our second product, Fresh Service, which is an IT, which was initially meant to be an IT help desk solution. That was in 2014. 2 years later, we launched our third product, a CRM product called Fresh Sales. And 2016 was also the year when we started the Freshworks platform initiative. I'll spend some more time discussing the Freshworks platform as we go into this talk. But that was when we started the effort of having a common platform that could be shared by all of our products. Up until that point in time, each and every one of our products was a completely independent tech stack with no shared platform. Moving on to 2017, a very eventful year for us, where we launched 4 new products. Probably somebody wants to mute themselves.
Yeah, got that for you.
Thanks, Veda. So 2017 was a very eventful year for us. Launched 4 new products. Fresh Chat, which is a web engagement product. Fresh Caller, which is a telephony product that we pulled out of Freshdesk. Earlier, the caller functionality was a part of Freshdesk, but we made it an independent product offering a call center solution. Fresh Marketer and marketing automation solution, and Fresh Team, which is our HR oriented product. 2 of these products, Fresh Chat and Fresh Marketer, were based on acquisitions that we had done. Fresh Marketer came through the Zarget acquisition, and Fresh Chat through the Conotor acquisition. So that is also part of the journey that we've had as Freshworks. Is we have acquired companies and that have helped essentially build out our product portfolio, enhance our product capabilities. And 2017 was one of those very eventful years where a lot of this came together. We also launched our marketplace, which was in some sense the first shared service out of the Freshworks platform. The marketplace being a platform on which third-party developers could create apps on Freshworks products, leveraging the APIs that we offered. So really helped provide the ability for our customers to build capabilities for themselves, which were not available natively in the product. And 2017 was also the start of our Freddy initiative. Freddy is the marketing name that we use for AI/ML capabilities in Freshworks. So that's broadly the umbrella under which we look at our AI/ML efforts. That's what we call Freddy. And we started the AI journey in 2017, essentially recognizing that all of the business applications that we were building, whether they be Freshdesk, Fresh Service, Fresh Sales, all of them really needed to be AI enabled to provide our customers the productivity benefits, the overall end customer experience benefits that AI can offer. That was the basis for us to start our investment in AI/ML in 2017. 2018, we launched Fresh Connect, which is our collaboration product, and Fresh Ping and Fresh Status, which are essentially monitoring and status page applications. Fresh Connect today is considered part of our platform. We don't offer it as an independent product anymore. It is a collaboration platform that's embedded in all of our products. And on the platform front, we launched our Fresh ID capability, which offers single sign-on across all of our products, enabling customers to use a single sign-on capability across our products and also leverage any other single sign-on provider they may have to authenticate users into our products. We also launched our analytics platform, essentially being able to offer business insights and reporting capabilities in our products. Earlier, reporting used to be embedded in each of our products. And this was our platforming effort to make analytics as a platform that was shared across all of the products. And we saw the first results of our Freddy investments in 2018, launching Freddy for Freshdesk. So providing customer support agents with help in terms of replying to emails, identifying the right solution articles for them, being able to categorize tickets appropriately. So this was our first launch of AI capabilities in Freshdesk. 2019, we launched our Fresh Release product, which helps software companies manage software development, very agile development focused. So this is what we use internally as well for our overall product development. Fresh Release is the product that we use internally for our overall software development in terms of tracking our backlog and issues. And so that's the product that we launched in 2019. And the Unified Customer Record was a launch of the platform initiative where we created a shared customer data platform that could be used by all of our products. So all customer information, contact information was centralized in the Unified Customer Record. That was the new platform that we launched in 2019. And we launched Freddy capabilities within Fresh Sales also in 2019. And to the current year we are in today, we launched Fresh Success, which is our customer success product, again, based on the acquisition of Netero in 2019. We relaunched Netero as the Fresh Success product this year. And recognizing the need to provide more integrated solutions to our customers, we have launched Freshdesk Omnichannel and Freshworks CRM this year. Freshworks CRM is hardly 2 months old. Freshdesk Omnichannel was earlier in the year. Freshdesk Omnichannel essentially brings together Freshdesk, Freshchat, and Freshcaller as an integrated product for customer support, enabling email and phone and chat-based support to be integrated through a single experience. And Freshworks CRM is the integration of Fresh Sales, Fresh Marketer, Freshcaller, and Freshchat, oriented towards Salesforce automation and marketing automation with embedded chat and phone capabilities. That's the Freshworks CRM. So today we don't offer Fresh Sales and Fresh Marketer as independent products anymore. They are available within Freshworks CRM. And on the Freddy front, we launched Freddy within Fresh Service, the AI capabilities within Fresh Service. We have a virtual agent capability that's available where employees of a company can interact with a chatbot to get IT help. So that was one of the Freddy capabilities that we launched in Fresh Service this year. So that's a brief journey of a brief history of Freshworks, I should say, in terms of how we have come to where we are today. I think I'd like to essentially focus on these three aspects in terms of Freshworks being a multi-product company, it's a fairly unique path that we have taken in terms of not completely focusing only on one product, really choosing to build out products in completely different business domains, whether it be customer support or IT help desk or CRM. Um, uh, and the other two aspects is in terms of how we have built out the Freshworks platform for as a foundation for all of our products, and looked at the AI ML investments, what we call Freddy, across our products as well. So happy to take some quick questions here. Shweta, if there's any questions, happy to take them now.
I feel there aren't any questions. It's just the introductions which are going on in the chat. But if there's someone who'd like to ask a question, you can unmute yourself right now.
Hi, Prasad, this is Satish here. I have a question to you.
Sure.
So it's kind of impressive to see the kind of product journey that Freshworks has gone in with multi-product strategy. What's the rationale or strategy behind going after multi-products? And is there a common underlying platform framework on which these are built, or each one is very distinct?
The business strategy, Satish, is essentially being able to operate in multiple business domains. As we set out as Freshworks, we recognized that there was a business model that was working for Freshdesk in terms of inbound sales, being able to build out a global customer community based out of Chennai from an overall complete business point of view, not just the product development side, but the marketing, the sales, the customer support. And that was a business model that we wanted to leverage across multiple business domains, as opposed to just restricting it to the first product that we launched in customer support, which is Freshdesk. The business model itself seemed something which was viable across multiple business domains. And that's the reason why we chose to get into completely distinct business domains. These were not even adjacencies. They were completely distinct business domains. And from a technology approach in the early days, if you were to look at up to 2016, each product was a completely separate, independent technology stack. They were broadly based on the same architecture of Freshdesk, Ruby on Rails with MySQL. At a broad level, there was commonality at that level, but otherwise it was a separate code base, separate engineering teams with practically no sharing of code. They would probably share a few gems with each other, which they found helpful, but by and large, a completely independent technology stack for each of the products. It's only much later that when we started the platform initiative, that we've been looking at sharing platform services across the products. And I'll get into some details as we go in further.
Thanks, Prasad. Thanks for that. Thank you.
Hi, Prasad. This is Saif here from Zusi Systems. Just want to understand, like, though it started with multi-product journey, eventually by 2020, it seems to have been getting consolidated into some single products.
Correct. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. So, like, can we assume like this is the strategy normally any company takes, like, to actually build a solid product at the end? And what would be the goal, like, by looking at the trend, like by 2022 or something, like, can we see one single product that giving all the services out?
Hard for me to predict the future, especially in the business domain, Saif. I'm not sure I'm the best person to make those predictions. But to answer your earlier question, you're absolutely right that we do see the need to consolidate our products within each business domain. So Freshdesk Omnichannel continues to be focused on customer support, but pulls together Freshdesk, Freshchat, and Freshcaller. Freshworks CRM pulls together all the requirements for Salesforce sales automation and marketing automation, pulling together Freshsales, Freshmarketer, Freshcaller, and Freshchat. And we actually we see that in the IT space as well, where we're looking at fresh service and fresh release being capabilities that would come together under fresh service. So in that sense, yes, we do see the need for being able to offer integrated solutions, a seamless experience within each domain. But I'm not so sure whether this will continue further, where you have a single SaaS product that serves all domains. I'm not saying it cannot happen, but I do feel that within a business domain, looking at integrated offerings, I think will definitely be something which benefits the customers, where they have the ability to have a seamless experience across their entire business workflow, as opposed to working with separate products within that same function.
Okay, thanks, Prasad.
Hi, Prasad. I had a question around analytics. So when you said that in 2018, you moved from embedded analytics to analytics as a product or analytics as a service. Now, can I ask you, when was your first data warehouse created, or it was still from your OLTP, a replication of an OLTP database? Because at Interview Mocha, we are planning to start with an analytics, and that's the reason for the question.
I don't remember the exact date. It was before my time in Freshworks. My guess is that probably sometime in 2014 or so, we already separated the OLTP database from the analytics database within each product. We were using RDS for the production databases, and we're using Redshift as the data warehouse within each product. So that's something we did very early in the product lifecycle itself. It's a fairly, in some sense, it needs to be done fairly soon, because you will not be able to sustain the reporting workloads on your production databases. And if you continue to do that for too long, you will really be limiting the capacity of your the transactional capabilities of your customers. And so separating out the OLTP from the reporting requirements into separate databases is something which I would encourage people doing as soon as possible.
Got it. Thanks, Prasad.
STS, I'm sorry. There's some people who are messaging me saying it's kind of interrupting the flow, so they'd like to listen to you a little more before they ask more questions. Is that okay with you?
I'm absolutely fine. Maybe I'll move through my slides if we can, if there are no, I'd prefer to make it slightly interactive, but maybe I can just restrict it to 1 or 2 questions for each slide,
yes,
rather than open floor. Yeah, makes sense.
Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to the scale of Freshworks, just showing some numbers of how Freshworks has grown over the last 5 years that I've been with them. Shows essentially the growth in terms of number of web requests going up from 19 million web requests per day back in 2016 to close to 400 million web requests per day in 2020, where we are today. And the growth in terms of customers from a little over 102,000 or in 2016 to 341,000 and growing in 2020. This has been our customers using our products across all of the products that we have. And lastly, the number of engineers that we have today in Freshworks, close to about 1,200, starting from about a little less than 400 that we had back in 2016. There obviously is some kind of correlation between these various numbers. I wanted to share this with you to give you a sense of the scale of Freshworks. So I'm going to spend a few minutes to provide an overview of the Freshdesk architecture. This is something which is fairly similar architecture that we have in Freshservice and Freshsales as well. As we have acquired companies like Conator and Zarget, we have also some Java stack based products like Freshmarketer and Freshchat. So we do have other product stacks within Freshworks. I'm focusing on the Freshdesk architecture, which in some sense is the predominant product architecture that we have in Freshworks. So starting at the user interaction level, we have obviously the web-based users who are the predominant users of Freshdesk. We have a mobile app for agents to use Freshdesk, both agents and administrators. We have the help widget that is embedded within our customers' websites. Email is the primary channel for support, and that is the channel that was originally supported by Freshdesk. And over time, we've expanded that to support other channels, and some of the primary ones are Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, are some of the new capabilities that we've added into the overall customer channels supported by Freshdesk. Obviously, chat and phone calls are also embedded elements within Freshdesk through Freshchat and Freshcaller. So the application servers, the backend servers that we provide are essentially based on Ruby on Rails. That's the overall backend functionality, backend server technology that we use. And we use Ember as the framework for our web application development. We have native mobile applications which communicate with the backend servers. So what I'm showing here is at a very high level the architecture of Freshdesk, showing the overall network management aspects in terms of routing, load balancing, the availability across multiple server stacks to ensure availability, the rate limiting capability that we have a platform service for. And then within the Freshdesk application itself, the modularity that we have of being able to split the functionality across tickets, contacts, other modules within Freshdesk, such as our knowledge base. And over the last couple of years, we have started investing in Java-based microservices to extend the overall Freshdesk functionality. So that's what you see as the Java layers out there in terms of the microservices that we have started building out within Freshdesk. We use MySQL as the primary transactional database, and we use Redis for our caching. There are multiple persistent data stores. There are other databases that we use as well. What I'm calling out is the predominant elements within the Freshdesk architecture. And showing here how the Freshdesk core product interacts with the Freddy capabilities, which are, you can think of it as being provided almost as a separate platform service, but it's very specific to Freshdesk. So the Freddy for Freshdesk platform is not shared with the other products. It is dedicated to Freshdesk. And what I'm showing here as Neo on the right-hand side is the marketing name that we use for the Freshworks platform. And that's essentially what has our search capabilities, marketplace capabilities, analytics, notifications, whether they be web notifications, mobile notifications. All of that is embedded as part of our Neo platform. And we have multiple modes of communication between products and platforms. Some of them are through RESTful interfaces. Some of them are more asynchronous, where we leverage Kafka-based messaging for communication between the products and the platforms. And some of the asynchronous processing is also handled entirely within the product, where we don't need to hold up a web request for an asynchronous processing. So we use the concept of background jobs, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, for processing the asynchronous requests. So at a high level, this is the Freshdesk architecture, and you can look at Freshservice and Freshsales as being broadly based on a similar architecture, but obviously the modules and functionality are quite different in terms of the different domains that they operate in. Time for a quick question.
Hi, this is Prashant here.
Yep.
Being the architecture divided into microservices, are there microservices which provide functionality across multiple products?
Yes, we do.
Let me just take a few seconds to explain the question. Looking at the scale of the product and the number of divisions, right? Collaboration of microservices could be a challenge here. So how is that also handled, across teams, and how microservices are developed coherently?
Okay. So I think I misunderstood your question up front. So when you look at the microservices as we see them in this architecture diagram, these are definitely product-specific microservices. What I meant was our platforms, whether it be the analytics platform, the marketplace platform, they are also leverage the microservice architecture. And those are shared platform services across products. But I think to specifically address your question, we don't have microservices per se that are shared across products today.
Thank you.
We have platforms that are shared across products today.
Hi, Prasad. This is Madhu from Hippo Video. We also built on Ruby on Rails. Is there any particular reason to move away from Ruby on Rails? Is there any threshold or concurrency throughput we have to look out for?
It's not so much the concurrency or throughput challenges with Ruby on Rails applications, Madhu. So provided you're willing to invest in the infrastructure, Ruby on Rails applications can be made to scale to significant levels. The main advantage we see with starting to develop some of the microservices within Java is that the cost of the infrastructure is significantly less for Java-based applications, Java-based microservices, when compared to Ruby on Rails-based applications. So for us, it's more of a cost question. And obviously, coincidentally, you do get certain benefits of using Java, but our primary consideration really was the cost of the infrastructure tends to be significantly higher for Ruby on Rails applications.
Okay, got it.
Hello, Prasad. Meet this side. This is more of a specific technical question. How do you manage consistency between your search DB and the transactional MySQL DB? And how do you manage the pace at which they will keep on syncing? For example, as a customer, I made some transaction. How speedily it will be available in the search engine for me to search?
Right. Great question, Puneet. I'm going to make that the last question for this slide. So we cannot guarantee consistency between the production database and the search indexes. There will be latency, both introduced by the fact that data has to be pushed from the product through the messaging infrastructure in Kafka, and as well as the indexing time that it takes within Elasticsearch to make the search results available. So typically we do not guarantee consistency, that the most recent updates you've made in your production database will not be immediately visible in your search results. So that is something which we essentially offer it as a kind of a soft SLA, if I may say that, where we say that most of the production data will be available in the search indexes within 60 seconds or so. So we are not making any guarantees on that front, but we make people aware that search results are not guaranteed to have every single change that is there in the production database. Now, there are specific cases where we need more real-time capabilities in search results, where we use search for some of our dashboards in the products. So we set up special purpose Elasticsearch clusters to provide more real-time guarantees. Now, again, not transactional level consistency, but the dashboard search clusters are essentially engineered to provide more like a 5-second latency between the production data and the search results. But we don't use the dashboard clusters for general purpose search. They are meant for specialized capabilities within the product, like dashboards.
Prasad, just if I can ask one more thing here. I have seen in, for example, if I as a customer, there's a list of some, let's say, tickets which is showing to me, right? And this is through a filter, I'm seeing a list of tickets and I update, let's say, a bunch of them. Then this has to be in real time, that if I am on that particular filter, these results should be omitted from that particular filter. And this has to be in real time. Like, so how does that is guaranteed? Then if there is 5-second to 60-second lag, then how do you guarantee this in filters of tickets or sales or leads?
That will typically have to be handled within the product, Puneet. So if the product is going to use search results for some of these lists, they would have to overlay some logic on the search results to track consistency with the production database. It becomes a detailed discussion, Puneet, but broadly speaking, we try to avoid search results when you need transactional consistency with the production database.
Thanks, Prasad, for the answer.
Cool.
This is Sri Krishna.
Sri Krishna, if you don't mind, I'm going to take the
sure.
question at the end.
Sure,
So
no problem.
I'm limited to 2 or 3 questions for each slide.
Sure, no.
Cool. Folks, I'm just going to take a 10-second break. I need to just quieten the environment a little bit. I hope you're not hearing too much background noise, but let me see if I can make it a little quieter. I hope it's a little quieter now. I was afraid that there was too much background noise coming in from my side. So moving on, I'm not going to dwell too much time on the next slide. It's a bit of an eye chart. Pretty sure it's hard to even read some of the words that are there on the slide. This is more of a production architecture view of the Freshdesk product. What I was showing you earlier in the previous slide was more of the technical architecture. This is the Freshdesk product as it operates on our AWS infrastructure. So again, I'm not going to be spending a whole lot of time here. Just you can think of it almost as how do we overlay our overall technical components of the Freshdesk architecture into our AWS infrastructure. So probably a couple of things that I would highlight here is in terms of our increasing usage of Kubernetes the production architecture. Both are Ruby on Rails primary product modules, as well as the Java-based microservices, moving towards Kubernetes as being the underlying compute infrastructure for the applications, calling out the various AWS services that we use, which are fairly standard in terms of we use RDS for our MySQL databases. We were earlier using Redshift for our analytics data warehouse, but now we have moved to Snowflake as the data warehouse for our analytics. Of course, analytics is a platform; it's not part of Freshdesk per se. The shell architecture is something which is very interesting. This is a way by which we are able to have dedicated compute capacity. Think of it as dedicated application servers for specific customer segments, where you are able to leverage the database sharding that we use, where we separate customer data across multiple data shards. We are able to also segment the application servers by database shard. So you can potentially have different levels of capacity available for different customer segments. So that shell-based architecture is something which we have worked on. We launched it about a couple of years ago, and it has proved very valuable in terms of the ability to isolate customers from each other. And in an extreme case, you could even think of offering a dedicated shell for a customer if their capacity needs are very high. So not planning to take a whole lot of questions on this slide, folks. Was not even planning to spend a whole lot of time on this slide. But if you have any questions, we'll take them up at the end. Want to spend a few minutes to discuss the rationale for a platform. If you look at our journey through Freshworks of how we have come to where we are today with Neo, which is the marketing name for the Freshworks platform, our initial thinking, our initial rationale for starting the Freshworks platform was very basically engineering efficiency. That's really what we were aiming to do. We had engineers working on reports in different products. We had engineers working on reports in Freshdesk and Freshservice and Freshsales, and down the road, as we added Freshchat, Freshcaller, etc., there were engineers working on reports on each of these products. There were engineers working on search on each of these products. There were engineers working on the overall email interface that was supported in many of our products. There would be engineers who would be working on the email channel in each of the products. And our initial driver was essentially saying, why do we need to have people working independently on what is essentially the shared level of expertise? Why should there be one engineer, two search engineers sitting in each product? Why don't we create a search team where we can provide search as a service, or reporting or analytics as a service, or email as a service to all of the products? That was the initial rationale for the Freshworks platform, was pure and simple engineering efficiency. As we began to see that customers were using multiple products from Freshworks, this is where more of the business justification for the Freshworks platform came out, which is there's actually customer value that we can deliver by having a shared platform across adjacent products, whether it be Freshsales and Freshmarketer, or even single sign-on, which is just customers using each of our products completely independently. Having a single sign-on as a capability obviously had to be a platform service. There was no way one could think of single sign-on not being a platform service. And over time, this has really become the primary driver for the Freshworks platform. when you think about the unified customer record, when you think about analytics, being able to offer analytics across multiple products, all of those aspects have become the primary driver for the Freshworks platform. Another element that has grown over time as Freshworks has scaled is infrastructure cost optimization. Essentially being able to replace third-party vendors with our own internal platforms. Earlier, we used to use log entries, and I think it's now called Rapid7, for most of our logging and diagnostic support. So we have invested in our own logging platform service. We call it Haystack. And so today we don't use log entries anymore. We use our internal logging platform Haystack. So similarly, we used to use SendGrid at one time for most of our email infrastructure. But our email service essentially has, our internal email platform has essentially replaced SendGrid. So like this, there are multiple examples where we used to rely on third-party vendors for specific platform services. And at Freshworks scale, it has begun to make sense for us to be able to do that in-house. One definitely turns out to be less expensive for us to be able to do that at Freshworks scale. It may not be reasonable for an earlier stage startup to make that kind of investment, but at Freshworks scale, that is definitely helping us. And it also helps in terms of quality of service. In specific areas, having our own internal platform service to replace a third-party vendor enables us to improve the quality of service as well. So these have been the three drivers for building out the Freshworks platform, what we call Neo today: engineering efficiency, being able to deliver customer value across adjacent products, as well as the infrastructure cost optimization. I think one element that we are beginning to invest further in is what we call the product platform itself, is that even within Freshdesk, even within Freshservice, even within Freshsales, being able to separate out the underlying platform for the product as distinct from the overall functionality that we deliver to the end users, to the customers. So this is an area, whether it be through microservices, whether it be through component frameworks, this is an area where we are looking to make increased investments, where we create product platforms for each of our products as well. And the primary advantage there is that as you think about serving mid-market customers, customers with larger scale needs, more complex business processes and workflows, having a strong platform with a rich set of APIs gives the mid-market customers, the enterprise customers, the ability to extend the product much more easily, rather than having to look at APIs being engineered on top of a UI-oriented product. So I'm not going to be spending a whole lot of time on the product platform side, but that's an important consideration for you to keep in mind as you think of platforms even within a single product company. Happy to take a couple of questions here.
Hi, Suresh.
Go ahead.
Hi, Suresh. This is Adi. I have a quick question on choosing the right set of platform and the tech for building an enterprise system. 10 years ago, if you would have asked me, I would choose Java. But recently, there is a shift towards JavaScript-based full stack development, right? So how do you see in terms of this migration, in terms of scalability, maintenance, and maturity?
So I'm not going to get into a detailed justification of one over the other, it is always a hard choice. And at one level, even if I look back at the history of Freshworks, we have tended to allow developers to use different technology stacks. As you'll see when we get into a slightly deeper dive of our developer platform, our marketplace platform, we do use Node.js fairly extensively for building out our developer platform. So in that sense, we are quite open to using different technology stacks. Overall, my preference for Java-based services, Java-based platforms is they tend to be easier to maintain, easier to diagnose. In the long run, they tend to be something which is more sustainable. But again, it's not that it cannot be done in other languages. That's the reason why we've chosen to go with Java for more of our platform services. For our microservices, we've tended to lean towards Java as the framework for the microservices and platform services. But quite frankly, we do not make it a requirement that everything has to be only in Java. We obviously have Ruby on Rails as the primary product development framework. We do use Python for our AI ML efforts. As I mentioned, we use JavaScript for our developer platform capabilities. But that would be my overall justification for using Java for microservices and the platform services.
Hi, I'm Abhay from Razorpay. It's very interesting to know about the shell-based architecture you mentioned. Is it something specific to Freshworks, or it's kind of a common norm or architecture that's followed for multi-tenancy?
It's a specific capability that we've built in Freshworks. So this is not something which comes standard with Ruby on Rails or with Kubernetes. It's the ability to partition application servers based on database shards. So this is something which we...
Do you have any...
Yes, Dinesh here from Kissflow. When you have a platform, common platform across all products, the challenge is in prioritizing the features for different products, because every product will have their own feature priority. And pretty much everything will roll back to the platform because platform manages a chunk of work, right? So how do you manage different product priorities in a platform team? Because you end up creating a huge platform team and all the products will rely on feature set from the platform team, right? How do you manage that?
Great question. I'm going to take that after the next slide. I think the next slide has some data that I've created based on my experience at Freshworks. After that slide, I think I'll address your question.
Sure, thank you.
So this slide is, in some sense, look at it as a synthetic slide. It's not based on true Freshworks data, but more to illustrate a point as to how one gains efficiency through a platform. So I've looked at the growth of a company which has, let's say, at a certain point in time, requires 100 product engineers or 100 engineers overall for developing and maintaining and operating their software as a service product. And over time, their requirements grow. They need 200 engineers, 400 engineers, 800 engineers. That's the x-axis that we are seeing here. And what I'm trying to project here is how do you derive engineering efficiency through platforms? So I've taken a rough approximation. You can, in terms of seeing about 30% productivity increase in product engineers when you have a platform. Very frankly, you can even aim for higher. There's no reason why you should aim only for 30%. You could very well go for 40%. It really depends on the specific product that you're building. What are the capabilities that you can abstract into the platform? The key thing is the platform focuses on low frequency, heavyweight changes, while the product focuses on high frequency, lightweight changes. So think of it as sort of core capabilities and features. It obviously varies significantly as you think of different kinds of SaaS products, but that's broadly how you need to determine how much productivity increase you're going to get by investing in a platform. But that's really what I've tried to demonstrate here in this synthetic graph, trying to illustrate if you have 30% productivity increase on product engineering through the platform, how the number of engineers that you will need over time significantly comes down. So even at the early stage of having requiring 100 engineers, with 10 platform engineers, you're able to essentially bring down your overall engineering strength to 87. And as you move over to the other side, like when you have the need for 800 product engineers, you're able to bring down your overall engineering headcount down to about 700 by the strength of your platform. So this is just to illustrate a point in terms of how you can derive engineering efficiency through investments in platform. The exact number of platform engineers that you need, the productivity increase that you derive through your platform obviously will change from product to product, from business domain to business domain. But this is more just an illustration as to why we have derived significant value through our platform in Freshworks. So Dinesh, if I can get to your question now. There are two aspects of platform in terms of if you are looking at a shared platform across multiple products, that is typically where you tend to have the platform bottleneck, where there are requests from different product teams for platform enhancements. And that's the key point I've made at the bottom of this slide as well, is that platform enhancements take time. They are less easy to do than feature rollout in a product. That's typically the distinction you'd make, is that platforms handle low frequency, heavyweight changes, while the product focuses on high frequency, lighter weight changes. So the solution we've taken within Freshworks is, when you have a shared platform, really make it self-service, that the product team should be able to use each platform without interacting with the platform team. So you really have a well-defined set of APIs, a way to diagnose the platform. We are not completely in that ideal state yet. We are moving in that direction of making our platform self-service. So to a large extent, that brings down the overall bottleneck on the platform. When it comes to platform enhancements, that is something which, yes, you will need to be willing to wait for a quarter. Sometimes it might even take a little longer than a quarter to bring out a platform enhancement. And products need to be able to call out those platform enhancements that they need well in advance. So the platform teams can prioritize that and bring that into their roadmap. So that is how we have broadly solved this problem of making sure that our platforms don't become the bottleneck for the products.
Okay, got it. So
Prasad, hello.
Yeah.
Prasad, Hemraj here, Adrenaline. I have one question on the SSO which you have built on your product. So is that SSO is having a common authentication for all the products which you are having, or it will have an individual authentication?
It is common authentication across all the products. You have a single...
You mean, yeah. So if it is a common, so how that the users being shared between the applications? So you said that you're having a different engineering team for each and every product separately. So how this user data getting stored, whether it is stored in as each product separately, or it is showing in a common place? As you said, it is in a common place. So what will be the guarantee that point of failure?
So the independent stacks was way back in the history of Freshworks, Hemraj. So Today, we obviously have far more integrated architecture where the product teams leverage the shared platforms. The authentication information is kept as part of the what we call Fresh ID, which is the name that we give to our internal single sign-on platform. So the authentication information is kept within the Fresh ID database, which is centralized. And each product essentially has the ability to identify the users within the product. Though the authentication comes in through Fresh ID, the specific role that that user has within, let's say, Freshdesk or Fresh Sales is determined by that role of that user within the product. So that is where we have the separation between authentication and authorization. So the authentication is centralized in Fresh ID, but the actual authorization of the specific role and privileges that the user has within a product, that is managed within each product.
Hi, Prasad. One question.
Again,
How
in
does
the interest of time, can we take these questions at the end? I think I would like to be respectful of the feedback I received in the beginning where people want to ensure there's a good flow through the talk. I'll take these questions at the end. I think as a time check, how much time do we have left, Sweta?
Probably around, say, 40 more minutes for you to talk, and then we can open up to questions.
Sounds good. Let's move on. I'll take the questions at the end, folks. We'll take a couple of questions after each slide, but let's try to keep the slides flowing. So this is a quick overview of the Freshworks Neo, what the marketing name for our Freshworks platform, calling out the various capabilities that we embed within the platform. I mentioned some of these earlier, such as smart analytics, unified customer record, the marketplace, the collaboration, but other aspects are also called out here: search, custom objects, the channels which enable products to have a unified interface across WhatsApp and Apple Business Chat and SMS and so on. So this is a quick overview of the Freshworks platform, what we call Neo. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. We'll spend a little more time to look at the developer platform, which essentially consists of two parts. One is which is developer facing, and the other one which is customer facing, which is broadly what this developer platform calls out. So the developer platform is the underlying platform for our marketplace applications. Marketplace applications can be embedded in our products. If you look at Freshdesk, we have a Freshdesk marketplace where a third-party developer can come and develop an application that can be embedded in Freshdesk and makes it available in the Freshdesk marketplace. So Freshdesk customers can come and purchase the application, and we pay the developer based on the revenues we earn through customers buying the marketplace applications. That's the incentive for developers to create these marketplace applications. And customers benefit because they're able to get extensions to Freshdesk without having to invest in their own development. A third-party developer has identified a common need and created a marketplace app for them. They can find the app through the application gallery, the marketplace gallery that's embedded in Freshdesk. And these applications, essentially, once you purchase and install them, will have specific real estate on specific product pages where they will appear. So that's really how the overall marketplace ecosystem works. And the developer platform enables third-party developers to create these applications that are available through the marketplace to end customers. And the developer platform broadly takes care of things like security, providing data persistence, and providing you the compute infrastructure as well. So these marketplace applications are hosted on Freshworks infrastructure within AWS. And we leverage Lambda for providing that application infrastructure. So it provides a higher level of availability and security where these third-party applications are actually running within the Freshworks managed infrastructure within AWS. So that's a quick overview of the developer platform. I'm going to get into a couple of slides which try to provide an overview of the developer services. And the next slide will look at the how a specific marketplace application itself works. So on the developer side, we have a Rails-based application that enables developers to upload their applications, allows us to review those applications. It's a Rails-based application on MySQL. And this in turn then creates certain artifacts that are stored in S3, both the serverless code as well as any static assets that are required for the application that is stored in S3 and the assets required for the Lambda execution. So that is built through a Node.js service that's called deploy here. So think of this as the development lifecycle for a marketplace app. And the execution environment for the marketplace app is essentially what I'm capturing here. At the very top, it is the application JavaScript that's embedded within the products. We use Ember add-ons for Freshdesk, and we have a different way to embed the marketplace apps in Freshservice and Freshsales. But essentially, those application modules within the front end interact with Lambda-based serverless architecture for all of the business logic that is embedded within the application. That's broadly what I'm trying to demonstrate here. Not planning to spend a whole lot of time on this architecture itself, but I think one, it calls out how we have chosen to provide extensibility on our products. And as I mentioned earlier, leveraging JavaScript, Node.js as the technology stack for this specific platform. And I think I would like to also highlight the usage of Lambda, where it provides us a low-cost way of providing compute infrastructure for the business logic of the applications. Can I try to take a couple of questions on this? Not sure I can go into a whole lot of depth.
Yeah, this is Dattatri here. So if a third-party developer or a partner wants to write application, he'll write his business logic into the AWS Lambda, right? Is this understanding correct?
They will write their code in JavaScript. So essentially, their entire development environment is JavaScript with the Freshworks SDK. So we offer them a developer SDK, and their entire development is within their within JavaScript itself. So they are not aware of Lambda per se.
Oh, okay. And do they need to pay some separate charges for these apps they want to develop and deploy?
No, we pay them.
Okay.
So as they publish their applications in the marketplace and customers buy the applications, we pay the developers.
Oh, okay.
So developers don't need to pay us anything at all.
Okay. Thanks.
Hi, this is Santosh. I have a question that everywhere I see that you have gone in your design with MySQL. So is it any reason that you didn't, are you also using NoSQL or you're consciously using MySQL?
We do use MongoDB. We do use DynamoDB for various requirements, and are looking to also have Cassandra-based NoSQL persistent data store for some of our applications. But yes, we have predominantly used MySQL for our transactional data.
All right. So for a scale, if you have used like DBs like Cassandra, So are you facing any challenging as you scale out?
As such, we haven't yet fully deployed our Cassandra service. Cassandra is a new service, a new platform service that we are building out at this point in time. We don't have a lot of experience with Cassandra yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Prasad, Senthil here. So the persistent layer, what we are seeing in the developer platform, I'm sure the schema of that would not be able to judge, right? Because it's going to be developed by the developer. So in this persistent store, you are using MySQL or any other NoSQL databases?
I quite frankly don't know the answer to that question. If I remember correctly, we use DynamoDB as the persistent store for the marketplace application, Senthil.
Gotcha. Thank you.
I don't think we use MySQL for the data persistence layer in the developer platform.
Got it. It's difficult. That's why that's the reason for this question altogether.
Right.
Thank you.
Cool, folks. Moving forward, again, this is a slide where I can answer the least number of questions. I have a good understanding of what's here, but quite frankly, I leave it to my Freddy experts to make sure they know what they're doing when they talk about building out the AI ML capabilities in Freshworks. I'm presenting to you a very high-level view of how we look at the overall AI ML architecture within Freshworks. I'm sure some of you are familiar with some of these requirements from an AI ML capability. And that's basically what I've laid out in the various columns from left to right. How do you look at the various data sources that power your AI capabilities? Data ingestion, data engineering tends to be a very heavy element within any AI effort. It's almost like the hidden foundation under most of the cool stuff that you see under AI implementation is all the data wrangling that needs to happen to be able to extract that information and knowledge from all the data that you have. And on the right-hand side is where you have the models that we develop based on the data that we have from our products, being able to create different AI-enabled services, whether it be intent detection, sentiment analysis, various things like that, is essentially what you see on the right-hand side in terms of the model training being the experimental phase when you try out different ways to create those models. And once you see an effective model working, then being able to serve that model in production at scale, which is the model serving side. And at the very end, on the right-hand side, you have the Freshworks applications. And we have some BI capabilities as well under that. But the primary consumers of our Freddy architecture are the Freshworks applications. So on the left-hand side, one of the early investments that we made in a data lake, what we call Bikel, has really paid off well in terms of providing that foundation for our Freddy capabilities. So all of our production data across all of our products is available in a Hadoop-based infrastructure that we call Bikel, which is our data lake. And it typically has a latency varying between 4 hours to 24 hours. So that becomes the core data foundation for all of our Freddy efforts. Our Freddy efforts do not need to place any load at all on our production systems. They leverage the data available in the Hadoop infrastructure of Bikel for all the data they need for the AI capabilities. And we use a variety of technologies for the data wrangling. We use Spark, we use PySpark. There are a variety of technologies that we use for doing the data engineering side. And the process data is then what is available to the Freddy models itself, whether it be in Amazon S3, we have used ClickHouse for providing faster access to the aggregated data. And so those are some of the technologies. There are other technologies that we are evaluating for the overall data storage within the Freddy application layer itself. And what I'm calling out here is the ML ops. So this is, think of it almost like DevOps for AI capabilities. The two competing technologies that we've been using, one is ML Flow, the other is Kubeflow. And Amazon SageMaker, which we put more on the model serving side, also has some of these ML ops capabilities. That is another element that's there on the model serving aspect. So folks, I've tried to explain to you as much as I can understand of this slide myself. I have happy to take a couple of questions, but I must tell you, this is not an area where I have a very deep understanding of what's happening.
Hey, Prasad, this is Valinayagam. I have a quick question. So from the business standpoint, is it possible to generate personalized treatment to customers with this analytics service?
Personalized treatment. So we have both approaches where we have global models that effectively leverage data across all customer accounts to provide the AI capability, whether it be natural language understanding and things like that. There are specific instances where we have account-specific models, where the model for, let's say, lead scoring or classification of tickets may not use a global model, but can use a model that is built for each customer account separately based on the data of that specific customer account. And by and large, one can't generalize, but global models tend to work reasonably well. But there are cases where you need account-specific models to really be able to get the level of accuracy or efficacy that you're looking for. The global model will not give you enough value to work for specific accounts.
Okay, so as a follow-up question, so I mean, do we have a customer DNA so that we can address the customer needs in a 360-degree view?
Not sure I understand the question.
Okay, so we have a lot of information from customers from various applications. So is there a built-out which captures the customer DNA? For example, some of the key fields for a particular application towards the customer. So have we aggregated those so that we can better understand the customer and serve them very well?
Yeah, so not sure I would generalize it to the level of having an overall customer DNA, but there are specific Freddy capabilities that attempt to segment customers based on information that we have about them. For example, inside Fresh Success, one of the key elements that we want to be able to track is the churn risk of a customer. How likely is this customer to churn? So we leverage all the information that we have about what the customer has been doing in the product in terms of what kind of features have they been using, what is the level of usage. So we do have aspects like that where there are specific customer characteristics that we derive based on information that we have on the usage of the product. So, and this is not just within Freshworks itself. Fresh Success is a product that our customers can use as well to track the churn risk of their customers. So I wouldn't go to the extent of generalizing it as overall customer DNA, but being able to segment customers based on available data. That is what specific models do.
Understood. So one final question. So once we derive the insights from the data, how we are gonna contact the customers through touch points based on the preferred touch point for the customer? How do we identify that? maybe my questions are more towards the business end. So for example, if we have multiple channels, let's say SMS, email, and some digital channels. So how do we target those customers through various channels? And I mean, if we have a lot of channels, but customer is preferred for, let's say, only digital channels, then how do we target them? How do we identify them?
As far as I know, we do not have any AI model that can predict the preferred channel for a customer. As of now, I'm not aware of any, but I think it's a feasible model. It should be feasible for you to be able to track the previous channels that the customer has used over time, and maybe looking at it in terms of time of day and things like that. It should be feasible to develop a model that predicts what is the right channel to reach a customer at different times of the day. But I don't believe we have any such model within Freshworks at this point in time.
Yeah, thanks for your answers.
Cool. So want to spend a few minutes to address one of the challenges that we had in terms of really bringing AI into Freshworks. As a business applications company working in different domains, whether it be in customer support, IT help desk, or CRM, when you think in terms of customer requirements, the usual approach that you take when you are not aware of AI, when you're not aware of the capabilities of AI, you tend to have a very functional approach to the solutions in terms of thinking of what are the forms that you need to present to the end user, what is the workflow that the end user is going through. And that is one of the principal challenges that we had to overcome as Freshworks, as we embedded Freddy into our products, is how do we begin to think of solutions for our customer requirements, our market requirements, with an AI mindset, where we don't just think of a manual workflow that helps the customer solve the problem. How do you automate the workflow? Is there a way for us to leverage data that we have that offers suggestions to the human users to take the next best action based on the workflow? And over time, how do you even automate the workflow where human input into that workflow step comes down? So this was a significant change. And again, I would not say that the journey is complete. This is an area where, as you begin to see the need for AI-based capabilities in your product, this is one of the challenges that we had to overcome in terms of really enabling our product management teams and architects to think about the AI-based approaches as opposed to the typical data model and form-based approaches that you typically take when you think about business applications. The second challenge is, as we brought on board AI experts from outside into Freshworks, they had expertise, technical expertise in their areas, but did not have a good understanding of the business domains. It was almost impossible to find AI experts in our specific business domains. So this was the other aspect in terms of how do we get the AI experts to really understand the business domain? How do we look at an AI expert understanding CRM? What is the marketing process? What is the sales process? How can AI help? Developing that understanding on their side was another significant investment that we had to make. So to address these two challenges, the approach that we've taken in Freshworks, quite contrary to the platform model, is that we actually have Freddy teams embedded in each product. We don't have a Freddy platform team that serves all of our products. We actually have a Freddy team in Freshdesk. We have a Freddy team in Freshsales, which is now Freshworks CRM. We have a Freddy team in Freshservice. These are separate Freddy teams that completely focus on the AI requirements of their product. And we have found that to be the most effective way of being able to create that AI first thinking within the product and developing that understanding of the business domain in our AI experts. I'm sure this may not be a challenge for companies that are single product, but for us being a multi-product company in different domains, this is the approach that has worked effectively for us. Happy to take a couple of questions. All right, I think I've confused people sufficiently, so I think there are no questions.
Okay. Any specific points on rolling out the AI features? Is it to very small group of users, closely validating the things, and slowly ramping up?
That's a great question. And this is one of the other challenges of AI type capabilities, is that it's not a question of does the feature work or the feature not work. In typical functionality, that's how we look at it. Either it works or it doesn't work. In the case of AI type capabilities, let's say you're doing sentiment analysis or you're doing ticket categorization to classify tickets into high priority or low priority, medium priority, or figuring out which group to assign the ticket to based on an AI model. The challenge with AI features is that it's not a question of whether they will work or not work. It's a question of how well will they work. Will they work 80% of the time? And what happens in the 20% of the cases where they don't work? Is it something where the customer has to take care of things and correct them for themselves? That is one of the biggest challenges. And that is why the question that you asked becomes really important, is that AI features need to go through a much slower rollout process than you would for a standard functionality, because you really have to take a small set of beta customers who are really willing to experiment with the feature, understand that it will deliver value to them, but there will be some learnings that they will have to make along the way. So the rollout process will typically be much slower. You will need a fairly elaborate beta process, beta phase to validate the AI feature. And in some cases, you may even have to restrict the AI feature availability to the set of customers who can benefit from it. It may not truly be available to all customers. It may only be available to customers who have a certain number of tickets, because you don't have enough data to be able to do ticket classification when there are too few tickets. So that's a great question, and I hope I've answered it.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, Prasad, this is Shankar.
Yeah.
Yeah. My question is, I see the marketplace, which kind of provides a lot of apps for different products of Freshworks. So is there a marketplace for to extend the capabilities of Freddy as well? For example, you might not have all the models within that. Is there a marketplace, or are you thinking about it?
At this point, we don't have a marketplace for developers to come and contribute models to Freddy. So it's a great idea, but at this point in time, we don't have that ability to extend or add new models into our Freddy capability.
Okay.
Prasad, what is the reason for moving from Redshift to Snowflake?
From Redshift to Snowflake. I don't recall the detailed evaluation we had done between the two, but my recollection is that performance of queries is much better in Snowflake, and there are certain housekeeping jobs that you need to do periodically in Redshift to constantly keep the data storage, the indexes, the various ways to access the data. If you don't do that housekeeping on a regular basis in Redshift, performance tends to degrade, and also the storage capacity tends to increase. Snowflake is a lot more of a self-maintaining data warehouse, and you don't have the headache of trying to make sure that you are keeping things clean, and overall delivers much higher performance. I would say much higher performance than Redshift in terms of especially complex queries. I don't have, this is my recollection. If you need the details, we'll have to get back to you later on that.
Thanks, Prasad.
So Shweta, how are you looking on time?
So we have 20 minutes left. So if we could have the last 5 minutes with your slides and then move to Q&A, or last 5 to 10 minutes with you and then move to Q&A.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So I'll probably just use the last couple of minutes without questions on some engineering observations, which sort of move away from the more technical aspects that I've been focusing on so far.
Right.
So we'll probably spend time probably only on the first couple of slides here. A quick overview in terms of how big you should plan to be as you grow. Sharing some numbers here in terms of if you're reaching your product market fit stage of $1 million ARR, which is a good milestone to have, you should be looking at yourself being somewhere in the range of 15 to 18 people. And when I say the team, I'm referring here to product development, which is including product management, UX design, and engineering. And under engineering, I'm including all aspects of development, QA, the DevOps aspect. Initially, you may choose to keep that separate. You may choose to make DevOps more integral into development later. This gives you a rough size in terms of what's a healthy size to be at that product market fit stage where you're reaching the $1 million ARR stage. So as you look beyond that to establishing your presence in the market, really the initial market expansion, getting to $10 million ARR, 80 is a good number to keep in mind as you think of the overall product development team. And one key point I would emphasize in terms of maintaining a healthy balance across the function. So a ratio that I'd like you to keep in mind based on the Freshworks experience. It might vary a little bit across different companies, but our ratio is roughly like 1:1:6. So for each product manager, we have a designer and 6 engineers working as one team, as one squad, as we call it. So that's a ratio that we follow in Freshworks broadly. Obviously, on the platform side, there tends to be less of a product management and design requirements. It tends to be a little more engineering heavy, but on the product development side, this is the ratio that works very well. And the aspect of over specialization is that as you grow, you will have engineers who will want to focus on specific technology areas. I think it's great to have some specialists, but being able to orient most of your engineering team to be full stack developers, being able to cover the overall requirements of product development is something which will benefit both them as engineers, as full stack developers, and definitely you as a company, as a business, to have the ability to take on product work without being worried about having the engineering capacity in specialized areas. So that's one engineering observation I wanted to share with you. And this is probably going to be my last slide. One thing which I am very committed to within Freshworks and overall from an engineer's perspective, my aim is to really make Freshworks engineering always feel like a startup for Freshworks engineers. I'm sure some of you here in the audience are founders within startups or were part of the initial team when there were less than 10 or 20 people in the initial team. And you know the feeling of what it means to work in a startup, being a small team, having a strong sense of ownership, the autonomy, the ability to take quick decisions without going through multiple layers of convincing different people, and the intense focus on the customer. The customer is really somebody you can relate to directly. They're not somebody who's far away where you have no idea who is using your product. How do you create that environment for your engineers, no matter how big you become, whether you are a 1,000 engineer company or a 5,000 engineer company? Can you create the startup environment for your engineers? That's really what I'm calling out here. And the approach we've taken to establish that within Freshworks engineering, and this is not just engineering, it's Freshworks product development overall, product management, design, as well as engineering, is our own adaptation of the Agile methodology. How do we create the overall context that the teams need? So we have regular meetings, which we call aspirations, that enable engineers to understand the big picture, understand what is it that we are trying to do for the customer, give them a longer term view of where we are trying to go as a product over the next 12 months, over the next 18 months, give them that bigger picture, give them that longer term view. Engineers should not be looking at their work as just something which is over the next 1 month or the next 2 months, next sprint or the next couple of sprints. How do you give them that bigger picture of where we are trying to go? It's sometimes hard to understand why that is important, but I can assure you that it really helps the engineers be far more effective in all of their decisions, whether it be the architectural decisions, the trade-offs they make in terms of being able to bring out the feature fast versus really ensuring that you have a more robust feature. There's so many different trade-offs that engineers need to make, and providing them that bigger picture, that longer term context, really helps engineers make those decisions well. The second variation we have on the Agile methodology is the way we do solutioning. So when we have a feature that we want to implement in a product, we start with a problem statement. And that problem statement is typically put together by the product manager, and which essentially is, think of it like a short paragraph that explains in English what is the problem that the customer is trying to solve. And it's in the customer language. It's not in technical language. It's not in Freshworks language. It is in the customer language, and try to be as English as possible. So I2P is really the process that we follow in terms of feature development. I2P stands for idea to production, which is how do we take this customer problem statement and convert it into a feature that we can launch into production. So the I2P process is meant to be a very rapid process, typically takes 2-3 days, where the product manager brainstorms with an architect and a designer. It's literally these three people, product manager, an architect, and a designer, brainstorm the problem and come up with a solution. The solution will have the mocks in terms of what is the user experience going to be, and the architect has a high-level description of the technical solution for the customer problem. This is the I2P process. And this has really helped us, one, accelerate the overall development process, where because there's input from all three perspectives, from the product manager's perspective, the designer's perspective, and the architect's perspective, the solution is a lot more complete, a lot more pragmatic, keeping in mind the constraints of what we have in the architecture today, in the product today. So that collaborative solution is something which we follow within Freshworks product development. I think the other aspects are fairly standard in Agile methodology about prioritization of the backlog, the overall sprint model. The other variation that we have is that our sprint teams are long lasting. Our sprint teams are not just coming together for a few sprints and then breaking up to go and form separate teams. We keep our sprint teams together as long as people leave the team depending on various reasons, but by and large, each of the squads, the 8 to 12 people that we have within each squad, will stay together, and they will work together. They will establish the chemistry, the working relationship, since they have worked together over many, many months, and in some cases, even over years. So this is one key difference that we have in terms of having long-lasting cross-functional teams. So folks, with this, I'm going to end my presentation. Happy to open up the floor to questions. Sweta, how much time do we have for questions? And are you going to be moderating the questions?
Yeah, I've just shared a document with you, STS. I've shared it on mail too. I've sent you the link on Zoom chat. So that's where all the questions which came on chat are. I've collated all of them for you. And we can have people unmute right now and ask the questions too.
Okay, do you mind if I just take a minute walking through the questions in chat?
Yeah, STS, this is Suresh here. I have one question. Can you talk a little bit about how QA is placed within the organization, and who's responsible? Who does the QA report to, and who's responsible for it, and how does it get managed?
Cool. I actually had a slide on that, but I was planning to skip it in the interest of time, but let me see if I can find that slide here.
Okay.
So here's the slide. What I'm showing here is how quality assurance has evolved within Freshworks over time. I'll come to your question specifically in terms of how it is managed within Freshworks. So like most companies in the early days, it was heavily oriented towards manual testing. Initially, we would essentially focus on testing just the new functionality that went out in each release. Over time, expanded that to have broader regression testing, but still manual. So every release would effectively have to have a fairly long-drawn manual regression test phase to ensure that prior functionality wasn't broken in each release. And obviously, this introduces the overall slowness in the release process over time, in terms of as you add more and more functionality, the manual testing takes longer and longer. So we started investing in overall QA automation. I would say probably in 2015, we've really accelerated it significantly since then. But our approach today is to really ensure that all of the sanity tests that we run before we push a feature into production, and the regression tests that we run in our staging environments, our goal is to ensure that they're fully automated. It's not a question of just testing the functionality, but it should be testing it automatically. So you can run the tests repeatedly. And so that's really the phase that we are in today, where we ensure automation of our sanity and regression tests. There are cases where sometimes we do put out features without full automation, but we treat that as a backlog that we need to come back, and it's almost like technical debt that you need to pay down in subsequent sprints. The direction that we are moving in terms of beyond automation is really ensuring that QA as a function owns the overall customer experience of the product. What we've seen is that because of the breadth of our product, whether you look at Freshdesk or Freshservice or Freshsales or any of the other products that we have, they have a significant breadth of functionality. So even if a QA engineer focuses on ensuring that a specific functionality is working correctly, how do you ensure that we are also validating the overall customer experience in terms of not just thinking of that specific feature, but that specific feature in the context of the overall product? How do we ensure that we are not creating a jarring experience for the customer by this by some interaction of this feature with prior features. So that is the aspect where the reason why this becomes important, and Suresh, to address your question more directly, we embed QA engineers within each squad. So there is no quote unquote separate QA function which does things like on a post release basis. For us, QA is embedded within the development process. As the developers are creating the feature, the QA is working in parallel to create the test cases and the automation to validate the feature as part of the development process. So as the sprint is complete, you have both the automated test cases as well as the feature in staging. Typically, they would test it first within their squad stack before they push it out into staging. But that's how QA is organized in the product teams. We do not have QA as a separate function. It is a separate discipline, just as we have front-end engineers, back-end engineers, and certain DevOps engineers. QA is a discipline within the squad. It is not a separate function.
And it reports to engineering manager or?
Yeah. So typically engineering managers have 2 or 3 squads reporting to them. So all of the functions, all of the disciplines within the squads, whether it be backend engineering, front-end engineering, QA, all of them will report into the same engineering manager.
Okay, but if the same engineering we have only one engineering manager sort of person for every squad. They don't have 2 different squad responsible. Meaning, when I assume squad, it's across product, right? No, is it within the product itself, multiple squads?
Within the product itself, there'll be multiple squads. So Freshdesk has several dozen squads working on Freshdesk.
Oh, all right, got it.
This is Sri Krishna. How do you enable security for RL product lines, right? Cloud, because you guys are deploying in cloud being a shared security model, right? So what things you guys take care, if you can help?
So there are multiple steps we've taken. It's a great question. I think it's a topic for a deep discussion. Just to give you a quick answer, one aspect is developer awareness in terms of secure coding practices, vulnerabilities to watch out for, training our QA engineers to be sensitive to security aspects, embedding security testing tools. So we have both static analyzers as well as dynamic analyzers embedded in some of our continuous integration pipelines, so that as code gets checked in, we do static analysis of the code to identify vulnerabilities. And we do dynamic analysis as well for code as it runs in staging to identify any security issues. And of course, in production, we have periodic vulnerability and penetration testing that's done on a regular basis, both by internal teams, and sometimes we engage external security teams as well to do vulnerability assessments and penetration testing of our software in production. So these are the various measures that we've put in place to overall strengthen information security of our products.
Thanks for answering my question before. And Dinesh again. So when you have the SaaS products, the biggest annoyance is actually in people continuously hitting the system, DDoS, right? So they have an automated way of preventing that, or do you have a team that continues to look out for attacks on your product or the website and then mitigate the attack?
Yes, we do. So we have a security operations center, which is an extension of the NOC, which is overall responsible for the 24/7 support that we provide to the different product teams. So the SOC definitely tracks any such abuse or misuse of the products, and they are able to put in place measures to block IP addresses, put in various measures that prevents any form of attack or abuse on our products. So the SOC has kind of a security incident and event management. We use Splunk for overall security incident and event management. and they have various network level tools for being able to control access to our production infrastructure.
But the problem for us at least is every week someone is hitting, right? And it's going to be like 10 or 100 times bigger problem for Freshdesk as well. Because it's right now we have a team that continuously look after all the traffic, try to make sure that the attackers are not gaining access to the website as well, right? Is there an automated way of solving it? Because again, it's like someone is continuously looking to the systems, looking to the alerts, make sure they are tracking the patterns and then stopping the attack, right? That is again manual right now. How do we, because it's a bigger annoyance for us, right? For companies like Freshdesk as well. Someone is continuously hitting for some ransom, some reward. So is there a better way of solving this?
We don't have anything better than that at this point. So we do essentially monitor all access to our production infrastructure, and when we detect an abusive or malicious pattern, we essentially block it. Okay. So we do not have any form of automation to say, okay, when we detect this form of malicious pattern, we can automatically block it. It does require manual intervention.
Okay, thank you.
Any insights into disaster recovery failovers? Recently, we had an incident because of AWS. Yeah.
That's a very deep question. I would prefer not to open up new topics.
Okay.
Let me focus on the topics I've covered in my talk. I'm sure people have questions on those topics, so would prefer if you can avoid. I'm happy to get into disaster recovery, but it's a deep topic of its own side.
Hi there.
This is Prashant. Yeah, this is Prashant from SignEasy. So when scaling up teams, I have found one issue to be haunting all the time. That is the spread of knowledge. So when I was working on the product, I used to be alone, and a lot of knowledge of the product is concentrated with me. So post that, when the team is scaling, right, the knowledge to distribute among them and then get them productive has been a challenge actually. So how is that handled at Freshworks?
So the approach we have taken to solve that problem is what I was alluding to in terms of keeping Freshworks engineering, keeping Freshworks as a place where an engineer always feels that they're working for a startup, that they, so the idea is to essentially looking at squads, looking at even the platform services, the way we build out microservices. How can you create more of modularity within the overall product? So product engineers don't need to understand the entire product to be effective, as long as they can understand specific modules within the product, specific microservices within the product or the platform for that matter, they can become quickly productive. So that is essentially the solution we've taken, where if you have an overall monolithic framework where an engineer needs to understand the entire product to be able to become effective, it definitely slows down onboarding, and over time, as the product keeps growing, it just becomes a compounding problem. So that's the approach we've taken. And over time, yes, developers, as they get exposure to features in other modules, and typically that takes, in many cases, even a couple of years for them to begin to develop knowledge of the overall product. That's when they can essentially think in terms of playing more of an architect role. But that's essentially how we have solved this problem of being able to quickly onboard engineers by having more modularity within the overall code. So engineers can focus on understanding one module at a time, as opposed to understanding the whole thing.
Prasad, again, Saif here from Zeus Systems. Just want to understand, for engineers, like for QA people, like there are metrics that we use to always measure the productivity or the caliber of the person. What sort of metrics do we normally measure for a product manager?
Very, very sensitive question. So I'm going to share with you some metrics. I don't mean to suggest that it should not be seen as necessarily measuring the effectiveness of a person. I prefer to think of it as measuring the effectiveness of a process. So if you think about engineers, especially when you think about the development side of things, it is an area which is extremely hard to measure productivity. One can think in terms of lines of code and story points. And yes, there are ways in which we can try to track the productivity of a developer, or the development process. But one of the ways we focus on it is looking at cycle time in terms of how long does it take for a developer to be able to take a user story and bring it to the PR stage, to make it into a pull request. So that is essentially the initial development time. And the second part of the cycle time, which is how long does it take from the pull request to go into production. So our focus is on the cycle times to really understand how can we reduce the cycle time. Is there something we need to help in the development process so that the initial development cycle time is reduced? Is there something we need to do to maybe help the reviewers move faster in their reviews, or for the testing cycle to be faster? So the second phase of the cycle time is also reduced. So we don't look at it so much as productivity of a developer. It's more about really seeing how can we optimize that cycle time. On the QA front, sorry?
No, proceed.
On the QA front, essentially we track bug leakage as the primary metric in terms of the QA process. Essentially, how many bugs come into staging, how many bugs are caught in the regression testing. So that's in some sense aspects of lack of coverage in unit tests, lack of testing in the the branch level within the squad, and even more importantly, the leakage of bugs into production. How many bugs are found by customers or even potentially by QA after the software is in production? So that's broadly the metric we use for efficacy of the QA process. For product managers, again, it's extremely hard. One metric that we broadly look at is adoption of features. So it's one thing to build a feature, but being able to track the adoption of the feature in terms of what percentage of the customers are using the feature on a regular basis over time. In the first month, are 10% of the users using it. In the second month, are 20% of the users not just using it once. They should be monthly recurring usage of the new feature. Because at the end of the day, if you're building features that nobody uses, then essentially we are making the wrong decisions in terms of what problems to solve for the customer. So broadly speaking, monthly recurring usage of new features is one sort of success metric of the product management process.
Yeah, thanks.
Hi, Prasad. I have a question regarding multi-tenancy. Like being using MySQL, do you use something like Vitess, or I have even read somewhere like Freshchat uses CTOs data like that. So I think that's a complex part of SaaS. So can you talk about something like what you do? Like all your products share same data sharing, or each product has their own separate data sharing?
You're talking about data sharding or data sharing?
Yeah, the data sharing, how you do it. Like, do you use an external framework like CTOs data, or MySQL based framework called Vitess, or you have your own framework?
It's our own framework. In terms of the way we shard data in MySQL, we have our own framework. We typically don't have much of a sharding solution in place for other data stores that we use. Our sharding is very focused on MySQL, and we have an in-house solution that we have developed for sharding customer data.
Okay, but each product has its own data sharding, or all the products, multi-products in Freshdesk shares? Like you have fresh share. Okay.
Any product that uses MySQL would use the internal sharding approach that we have.
Okay, thank you.
Prasad, this is Gokul here.
Yeah.
Initially you recommended, having separate databases for OLTP and analytics platform, right? So how is the real-time data is maintained between these two databases?
It's broadly the same challenge as for search. So we do not guarantee that the analytics database has real-time data. We provide a kind of an SLA that there will be a 15-minute lag between production data and the analytics data.
Okay,
So
sure. Thank you.
Typically, we tend to perform well under that SLA, but the SLA that we set for our customers is that there's a 15-minute lag between the production data and analytics.
Sure, thank you.
Hey Prasad, this is Shakti from Chargebee. When we have a product and it is reliant on your database at the back end, so when you have so much of operations has to be done on a product side, on the database side, so there is a little of a downtime will be at that processing time, right? So there is a one approach, create a clone of that data into different database and then do the process and then route that live traffic to the processed one. So at that moment, there will be deltas will be coming, right? So how we are, where you are at Freshworks, you have multiple products, right? How you are managing that deltas at that processing?
So at which phase are you referring to? Is this in terms of a MySQL version upgrade, or you're talking about data migrations in terms of the data model changes?
Data migration, or probably a major product change in the backend side?
I'm sorry, I don't have the details on how we do it, Shakti, but we definitely don't have any downtime, so to speak, when we do data migrations in terms of as the data model evolves, as new features roll out. I don't have the details as to how we achieve that. I don't know if it's a question of there is, I'm sorry, I don't have the details of that solution right now, Shakti.
Oh, okay, no problem. Thank you. And one more question on top of that one. So with respect to the data as sensitive, right, with the product data. So we are keeping in one layer on AWS side and another layer on Hadoop side, for example, in Freshworks. So when you are keeping the data on the Hadoop side, right, do we have any other environment apart from Hadoop, which I can able to do a processing on top of the data? Which would be the best one to do apart from the Hadoop?
Obviously, we have the Freddy environments as I illustrated in that architecture diagram. But in terms of any other analytics of the data lake has to be performed within the data lake. So either you can think of writing MapReduce jobs or using Spark. We have Jupyter notebooks available as a way to create analytics on the data that we have in the data lake. But that is definitely something which we consider to be a very secure environment where access is pretty strictly controlled to the data lake.
Okay, got it. The reason behind that question is we don't have as such to jump into Hadoop environment. So is there a best practice before Hadoop which you have maintained? So probably we try to consume that one. So that's the reason I was asking that question.
Right. I think in terms of a data lake, I'm sure there are better alternatives evolving each day, but I would still vote for a Hadoop-based infrastructure, an HDFS-based infrastructure for a data lake. When you're thinking about massive volumes of data, especially data that you might even want to accumulate over years, I think an HDFS-based data lake is probably the best option.
STS, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I think that would have to be the last question for today because we're running out of time.
Hey, Prasad. Yeah.
We didn't answer any of the questions in chat. So
yeah,
I
so
hope
that STS, I'll probably just share a document with you. And once you like answer it, we can put out a blog where people can just read them that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to try to find the time for that, Shweta, but not sure I'll be able to take all the questions that are there in chat. But yeah, we can try to take the top 10 questions or so from chat.
I think Shweta is also trying to be mindful about your time zone.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right. We have the VP of product from Kissflow, Dinesh, to deliver like a tiny note of thanks. Dinesh, over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, STS, for a wonderful session. I want to ask for a better Saturday morning. A lot of insights about Stack, and more than that, a lot of insights about how Freshworks engineering is functioning, right? So it's extremely difficult to grow an engineering organization from a 10-member to 100-member to 1,000-member, probably you are right now. And a new set of challenges, and of course, is going to help every one of us who is part of this session to understand the knowledge and the process they actually went through at Freshworks, and is going to help us grow as well. Thanks a lot. Again, thanks a lot for staying late, answering pretty much all the questions. It's a privilege to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And would like to thank once again, Suresh, for inviting me here. Let's leverage all our collective learnings to make India into a SaaS product nation.
Thank you, STS. Great. Okay, guys, let's sign off.
Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you.
Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.